My name is Max Bamfield. Welcome to my talk. I'm the office worker who invented the world's first standing computer desk. But you may have thought that the research was completed by teams of international experts, but it wasn't. And you may also think that the desk was invented by a furniture company, but it wasn't. So in the next 10 minutes or so, I hope to explain to you how I did it as an office worker. And I'll go through three sections. The first is the early stages, when I came to the conclusion that poor posture was the cause. The second is the 6-year period when I had cancer. And the third is the section after that. And then you'll know how and why I invented it. I'll take you back to 1975. I was a clerk in a government office. And for several years, I'd gone from having chest pains, abdominal pains, kidney aches, to breathing problems, faintness, dizziness, rapid pulse, blood pressure. I was getting worse, but every time I went to my doctor or doctors, they would generally send me off for a blood test or a CAT scan, and they'd come back and there'd be nothing. I'd ask them what was wrong, they'd shrug their shoulders. They'd prescribe tablets, that didn't help. So that was the situation I was in. At one stage, I was sent to a psychiatrist, and he started asking me questions about my childhood. And suggestions were made that anxiety and stress was the cause because there's nothing physically wrong. Well, I knew those theories were not correct. How did I know they weren't correct? Well, first of all, I'd been offered 3 scholarships to study leadership at the Institute of Technology many years earlier, and all of the subjects were psychology. We're told none of the psychological theories have any scientific basis. They're just conclusions drawn because they don't know the physical cause. The second thing is, one of the suggestions that was made was that I had a fear of exercise and that was the cause of my symptoms. I was a gymnastics club leader. The type of gymnastics I taught were the Moscow circus style gymnastics. I never, ever in my whole life, ever had any fear of exercise. And the third reason is, these pains were sometimes, there wasn't any stress to be the cause. But the pains were sometimes caused by other factors, such as leaning down to tie my shoelaces. It's got nothing to do with stress. Or sometimes leaning towards the desk. So, that's the start. I thought I've got to study medicine to find a cause, because all these other ideas are not helping. And they've been around for this problem was very common, as I found out later. It's been around for thousands of years. I didn't want to wait thousands of years for someone else to solve the problem. I want it solved in my lifetime. So what did I do next? When I studied medicine, how did I do it? You can't go to medical school for a few hours a week. You've got to be full-time or they won't allow it. So I learnt the medical language, 1 word a day. Why? Because if I sat down at a desk for 15 minutes, I'd be in pain. I can only read and write for short periods of time. And then I started reading top quality medical research journals. Why? I wanted to know what the best researchers in the world were thinking and why, because I wasn't agreeing with what I was told. Why do they think that? So, I started. I'll now discuss what I did in the next 5 years. I noticed from taking a lot of notes that sometimes, as I said, I lean forward, tighten my shoelace, I get abdominal pain, but not every time. I'd noticed that sometimes I'd bend over toward a bench, that I'd feel faint and dizzy, but not all the time. I noticed all these different things happen when I seem to be leaning forward. And because it wasn't consistent, it wasn't easy to see that. But I'd taken a lot of notes. And so in 5 years, I drew this conclusion from my studies and my experience. Leaning forward was compressing my chest to cause chest pain. Leaning forward was compressing my lungs to cause breathing problems. Leaning forward was compressing my abdomen to cause abdominal pains. And leaning forward was compressing my kidneys, etc. And all the other symptoms were also similarly related. I wrote an essay and sent it to a nurse's journal, and that was called The Matter of Framework. And I called it the posture theory. Leaning towards the desk throughout the day causes those symptoms. Why did I call it a theory? Because I couldn't prove it. But I thought there's enough evidence there to pursue that area of interest. And I studied a lot of other factors as well. So that's the first 5 years I wrote the posture theory. That's why I started, because of all the health problems that no one else could solve. That's what I did in the first 5 years. 12 years later, I went for a blood test, X-ray, CAT scan, bone marrow biopsy, and a surgical biopsy, and I thought I've got cancer. And I was about to go see a cancer specialist. I was all in so much pain for other reasons. I didn't care whether I lived or died. But I wanted the specialist to tell me the facts so I could deal with them. When I went in his clinic, I said, I think you would reassure other patients so that they wouldn't worry. Is that correct? He said, yeah. I said, I don't want you reassuring me anything. You tell me the facts. And he said, your body's riddled with cancer. You'll be dead in 2 months with no hope of a cure. So go home and tidy up your financial affairs. Now, you and I know that means write your will. And I thought, oh, thanks for telling me that. That's another story I could tell you about later. But I knew I had cancer. So I thought there's no point doing anything to try and earn money because I won't be able to spend it. Won't live long enough. So I'll publish a book on posture and health for kids so they grow up healthy instead of sick like me, and sell it to school and public libraries. Right? That's what I did at the start of being diagnosed with cancer. I decided to write a book on posture and health and gather all the information I could. But I can only do it 15 minutes a day. And then I'd have to stop or the pain would get worse. So, after about a year, I had a 20-page book. I was still alive. I'd sold it to school libraries. Cost me $2 to make. I sold it for $2. I wasn't making any money. And then I started continuing till it was about a 100-page book. And in the meantime, I'd added a 6-inch high platform to my desk so that I was sitting up straight. But it didn't help. It should have, but it didn't. And then I got an angled platform and I put that on top to see if that would help, but it didn't. I'd write on an angled platform while I was sitting up straight. And sometimes I'd stand up and do it. Well, then I couldn't afford to pay the typist. So I thought I'd better learn to type. And I went to an auction and I bought a typewriter that was previously $2,000 new, bit of a computer on it. They're selling it for $5 because nobody else wanted it. The reason I didn't want it because it was real heavy. I had to get one of the auction people to put it in my car, drive it home, get one of my strong, heavyweight neighbours to lift it into my flat. When he put it on my desk went like that. Started to bow in the middle because of the weight of the typewriter. So then I had to lift the middle of the desk up, bolt really heavy beams underneath it to hold to support the weight. And I'd type. Why did I type? Because I found that if you, well, apart from the fact that I couldn't afford to pay the typist, I found that if you write, it's 20 words a minute. If you type, it can be 60 words a minute or more. 3 times the amount of information I put on a page, the same amount of pain, 15 minutes. So the next thing I did, I had to throw away the angle platform to hold this typewriter in place. Got up to about a couple of 100-page book. And then I couldn't afford to pay the computer guy who put the information from a typist into a computer. So I went to buy a computer. They were about $1,200 new. At the time, I bought one for $100 at auction. And I learned to use that. I still type, not for very long at the time. If I typed too long, I'd have to live with it for a couple of days afterwards. So I added another 6-inch high platform to my desk. And by then, I was standing all the time because the computer was so high, I couldn't use it sitting down. Right, still didn't help. And I was still looking for hundreds of other possible courses, considering hundreds of other things. Well, then one day I changed computers. By then the book's about 500 pages. And I purchased a keyboard tray as well. And the keyboard tray enabled the keyboard to be pushed in and out. And I put the computer on top of that. And then one day, as I adjusted all the positions, I started typing at 9, and by 11, I had no pain. I thought, I'm going to be rich. This is going to help. 300 million people have got the same problem. It's a very common problem. Probably 100 million office workers. And so I thought, if I publish this, copyright thieves everywhere are going to steal it and say they thought of it. So I better secure my copyright. Because I might live through this cancer. I've survived about 5 years so far. If I live, I could get quite a good income from this. So what I did, I didn't want to breach anyone else's copyright. So I got a diagram of a skeleton that's about 500 years old. Got some scissors and traced it, and glued the arms in a different position, and had the head and the eyes looking forward, and had the computer screen drawn in front of it. It wasn't even the same as my computer exactly. It was the same position of the arms, the eyes, and the screen, etc. I don't want to go into too much details for obvious reasons. But that's what I did. I put it on the front page of my book, and then I put copyright, all rights reserved, etc. And I was selling at the School of Public Libraries. By then it was probably about $30 a book. I thought, no one will be able to steal this copyright. And if I live, I'll be okay. Because I still had cancer. And then I rushed off to the newspapers. And I said, I've solved a problem that's been around for thousands of years. And they said, but we're just journalists. And they said, we don't know anything about medicine. And they said they can't publish anything controversial. Like I've discovered the physical cause and treatment of an illness that previously called mental illness cause and treatment, unless I get the support of the universities. So I rushed off to the universities. And they looked at me as if they looked a bit worried, but they also wouldn't endorse it, wouldn't buy it, and said you can't cure disease with a desk. And I still teach in the psychological theories on cause and effect, that office workers are getting sick because of stress. Well, I got nowhere with the universities. That meant the newspapers weren't going to publish. So I rushed off to the furniture companies. I went to every furniture company in Adelaide, furniture shops, furniture makers in various suburbs. And this is what they typically said. We're only furniture makers. What do we know about health? And they typically say this. They can hardly make a profit because every office has got a desk. Well, they're going to buy a new desk for. We're having trouble selling desks. And then they say this. If we tooled up to make a standing desk, costs a lot of money, none of our customers ever buy it, so we'll go bankrupt because we'll never be able to sell them. So I thought they were friendly guys, but that's what they told me. Try down the street. Another furniture company might be interested. None of them were. I go into a lot more details, but none of them were interested. One guy said he had one a couple of years earlier in his showroom. Nobody wanted it. He put it at the back. He said next week he's going to put it on the street for the garbage trucks to take away because nobody wanted it. Are you with me so far? Nobody in the newspapers, the furniture companies or the university were interested in 1999. None of them. This is what happened next. I had to go into hospital for stem cell transplant for cancer. I'd already been through 2 years of chemo and stuff like that. I had to go through it again. I was vomiting for 6 months, and for 18 months I was crook till I recovered. Now, I didn't know it then, but guess what was happening? Some of the professors in Adelaide must have been stealing this, my idea, and claiming that they did the research. And some of the furniture companies must have realised they were going to be good and started taking out patents. They didn't tell me, and I didn't know it till many years later. So that's what happened for that 6-year period while I had cancer. I think they started stealing my idea in the 2 years after, while I was recovering from chemo. Another 12 years went by, and just briefly, I had 40 essays. 40 essays published in the British Medical Journal. The online version of one of the top 4 medical journals in the world today. And I summarised a lot of the work that I've been doing in the previous few years. And I discovered the cause of a couple of mortal pains, the exact cause. Now, I'd like you to just think about that. 40 essays in the British Medical Journal I had published. I thought this will secure me as a world authority. No one will be saying they did this research. So I wrote an article to the newspapers. Which one? The Messenger Leader, a letter to the editor. And I said, this discovery can save the government so many billions a year in healthcare costs. And they published it in my suburb area and in 2 others. So what happened next? The newspapers and TV stations haven't interviewed me since. But newspapers in America report teams of experts have discovered that sitting is a health hazard. That's the posture theory that I wrote in 1980. They say it's new. They got it from me, and it's pretty obvious. And in Australia, they're saying international experts have given guidelines on how long to sit, stand, and move throughout the day to prevent health problems. Well, that's my research, and it's obvious. And furniture companies saying they're the world's leading authority on the sit-stand desk revolution. And the stock market saying it's a $6 billion a year industry and it's gone from nothing and it's booming. Right? That's what's happening now. And you don't even know my name. And you don't know that desk. The research was produced by an office worker because no one else could solve the problems. And an office worker invented it and published the design that everyone now copies. And if you have a look around now, and you're an office worker, you'll see them in hospitals, universities, and science labs. The value of that desk, reducing healthcare costs, improving the health of office workers, is known throughout the world. So I would like you, if you're an office worker or a uni student or a scientist who's using those desks to print the words Bamfield's desk on every standing desk and desktop you see. So that the public knows, and you know, and everyone else knows, that I did the research and inventing. Thank you for watching.